There's something about God, and this aspect gives me a lot of respect for him, and this is the uncorniness of God. It's kind of hard for me to show you this topic with a definition, but if I could try, I would say the uncorniness of God is accepting how a reality is and seeing God's nature through the tough reality that he's allowed on this earth. Let's start with this. God does not change, right? From the Gothic times where Christians used to serve in like the Middle Ages to the modern times we have now where we have the modern church with like contemporary music. It's so different, right? But obviously it's the humans who've changed, not God. So how can Christianity just warp and change like this? Does that mean Christianity is false? No. I mean, it's just it's just times changing. The roots of truth remain the same. It's just that the culture will always have its effect on what people will like. Even back then, the switch from the Middle Ages to the Renaissance, it was definitely a cultural shift for sure. So it continues to happen. The change is constant. But the truth that God lays in his word, it just stays the same. Since he doesn't change, how can he allow us to change? He's just given us free will. Like he's given Adam free will, the first human. And while he was made without sin, the free will, it always opened that window to sin. And this starts to define what I mean by uncorniness. God could have made us avatars for us to just be his pets and follow him to a T like a dog would. But something about God, his characteristic, he gave us free will. He gave us our own, what's that word? He gave us agency. Agency is a funny thing because neuroscientists can't find what area in the brain is actually pivoted inside a soul's agency. But yet, here we are every day, every second, making decisions. And it's so funny. It's so uncorny of God to allow us to have our own free will. And now, it sounds a little bit confusing about where I'm going with this, but just bear with me. I'm going to keep going. With free will, we have a lot of options. Obviously, sin. But you have things like fake Bible gospels. I don't know any of the gospels off the top of my head, but if you read the Mormon Bible, right, I think Joseph, the Gospel of Joseph, is one of the fake gospels. Like, isn't that so weird? Like, yeah, okay. So I'm telling you now, those extra chapters in the Mormon Bible, they're not good. Okay, they're not breathed, lived word of God. And we know this if you ask a theologian, he'll tell you, okay. But why would God like allow things like that to happen? Like, bro, that's so like God, why? It's just it just happened, bro. Like the reality is that people just they were never truly Christians. They went crazy. This is another part of the uncorniness. Why would a person go crazy? Within people who get sick, you have people who are like genetically sick. Like you have biological amalgamations of people who can never live good lives. Like people who are born, who have agency, who have human rights, but like their bodies will never give them a full life to be well lived as someone healthy like you and I would be able to actually have. It's like so weird. Like, God, why would you allow this to happen? But it just happens. Like it's just part of God's creation. Well, let me be more clear. It's part of the fall. It's part of what happens when sin enters the world. But yet he'd allowed it. And part of the gospel goes into he sent his son to redeem us from that. And well, you'd say, yeah, the biological amalgamations are still here, things like bipolar disorder, where people's mental state is just messed up because of trauma that's happened to them. If sin wasn't there, people just wouldn't have, and they wouldn't have to have like split personalities where they forget themselves in like a couple moments to literally be another character. Like, it's so weird. Like, why does Christianity have different divisions? Why do we have Protestants, Catholics, Baptists? Isn't that so weird of God to just allow that to happen? But the what I'm trying to say here is that part of the uncorniness is just nature going through its course. Like, it just happened, bro. It's just it just happens. And one of the worst, divisions is like cults. Like, you have people who say they're Christians, but they're on college campuses, doing insanely bad things. And it literally falls under the definition of what a cult is. Like, bro, God, what? Isn't like all these things on earth so like weird? And like another thing too, right? Like, the Bible talks about this, but evil men, well, evil people can prosper. And the Bible says, especially if you see in Proverbs, don't let it hold you down. Don't let it make you feel bad, for they will wither and away like the grass. And then you think, well, yeah, God, I'm gonna wither away like the grass too. Everybody dies. But like, you see rich people who die rich too, and you turn to God and say, where's the justice? Well, the reality is it just happened like that, bro. Like, they just they got rich, and they were able to manage their money well. They had no enemies that were able to overtake them, and they lived full lives rich. And it's seems unfair, but that's part of God's uncorniness. It just happened. Even if that rich person was extremely unfair or like evil almost. Isn't it kind of weird? I first started thinking of the idea during my sister's 15th birthday. I don't know how old my sister is. Every time, ever since she was born, I've always been forgetting her age. But for her 15th birthday party, you know, uh, my we were in the car, and my dad was telling my sister about how beautiful her life was. But when I thought about it, I was like, wait, my sister's life isn't that beautiful. She's had a lot of ups and downs. She's had a lot of mishaps. She's had a lot of stories that are just not beautiful. And yet we as people will just say it, your life is so beautiful. We believe it too. But in reality, life is chock full of downs. As we grow from these experiences, these sort of micro sufferings, our life just it gets better, and that's something that's beautiful. That's good that God has put in our lives, the ability to grow, um, especially out of suffering. And that's what I believe is where the maturity comes from, where the scars from our sufferings create our character and bend and shape our character into someone more elegant and more mature and more leveled up. But coming back to what I was talking about, when I saw the way my sister's life and the way humans tend to see it, you have the reality, you have God's reality, and you have the way we see it. And the way humans see things is extremely corny. It's not legitimate. Social media is a great example. None of that's legitimate. And what's funny is that our minds are very, very good at compensating and at like lying to ourselves, so the way we see the world is also very corny, like I will be studying, and then my mind will tell myself, you've been working so hard on this one assignment, you should go take a break. And I'm like, well, I haven't even finished the assignment yet. But my mind's like, oh, let's just go to YouTube real quick. And then we lie to ourselves. God can't lie. It's not a limitation, it's a superpower. He can't lie. And so when we look to this world full of brokenness and corny things that we try to cope with. It's just reality. I would say to understand corniness is to embrace reality. You see, when when we lose money, let's say you have a job and you're managing your money, but then you've been living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. Or perhaps you've lost a lot of money in an investment. You might look to God and say, God, what did I do to deserve this? What sin did I do like to deserve this punishment? But God's just looking at you like, you're just bad at math. You're not able to manage your finances. And that's just a reality. Like, people will be out here like looking for the second meaning of all these different things. It's just reality. To be uncorny is just to see reality for what it is. Another aspect of the uncorniness is the humor of God. God is a very, very funny person. And the first time I stumbled upon this was when I was reading about not when I was reading, but a certain age, like 11, 12 years old, you start to realize more mature jokes. And the first miracle, the very first miracle that Jesus did was his mother, his own mother, telling her son to make wine at a wedding where half the people were already drunk. And he did it as his first miracle. That's quite funny. That's very based. And the wine was good too. Apparently it tasted amazing. Like, it's funny how the Bible adds details like that, right? There's two very, very funny verses in 2 Samuel. The first of which is where Samuel kings. So, Saul, he's supposed to kill all the cattle. He didn't. He hears the flocks in the palace. Saul, the king, who God turns away from, he brought the king of the empire that he raided. He was supposed to kill the king. And so Samuel does it himself, but before he kills the king, it's very funny. He says, as you have made women childless, I too will make your mother childless amongst women. And that was like absolute slay, like literally slay. And another funny verse that happens is that Michal like disses her husband David for dancing half naked in the streets for worshiping God. And David doesn't like this because he says, well, you can't stop me from worshiping God. And those slave girls who were looking at me, they had nothing but respect in their eyes for their king who worshiped the Lord. And Michal had disdain in her heart in the very next verse. And Michal never had kids after that. Like, because what's funny is not necessarily the statement itself, but like the placement of it and like the bizarreness of like the end of the story to just that statement, like a bombshell. And I'm sure as I read the Bible, I will find plenty of more funny moments, especially amongst the disciples. That there's like a theory that they were teenagers. So God is a funny God. Another thing that I've noticed is that Christians just do things. They have the love of God on their hearts, but they're not perfect. Like, for example, I'm wearing this shirt half buttoned, like open buttoned, right? So what does this mean for me to wear my shirt like this? Like, am I trying to be cool? Am I trying to copy someone? Am I trying to be comfortable in my own house? There could be many reasons. Like, well, why did I unbutton it to reveal like a little more than half my chest? There's something about role models in real life that can never be truly perfect. First of all, there's this question like, is this wrong to do this? Is it wrong for me to wear shirts like this? There's no rule for that. There's, I'm not saying it's right. It's okay, but it's weird, right? Um, and you'll see, you see Christians who just do weird practices. A good example, is Christians who curse. They can be such powerful role models to look up to, certain Christians. But like, why do they curse? What? They love God so much. How can they curse? Like, they just, it just something about the character just shatters the image of that person and how much you look up to them. Well, it really, genuinely, you're really supposed to be looking up to Jesus. Your gold standard for who you're supposed to act like should really be like Jesus. Because you could look at David, you could study, all the amazing things that David did, but you have to realize, like, bro, he literally like gaped at someone bathing on a roof and said, "Hey, bring her here." Yeah, that ruins a lot of David's legacy for me. That one thing that he did, and obviously he did with God too. God didn't even respect him after that. And another, branching off that story, another aspect of the uncorniness of God is the fact that God literally says, "Yo, David, if you wanted more wives, I would have given you more wives, but you should have asked me." And then you just go like, "What? What, God?" But you say since the very beginning, since Genesis, like the beginning of Genesis, I don't remember what chapter it is, sorry. But you've said since the beginning of Genesis that marriage is between one man and one woman. Why would you allow David to do this? No, never more say, "I could have given you more wives." What, God? What? I thought you don't change. It's the uncorniness of God. You see, it's it's this character aspect of God that, like, is just there, that I can't really describe. But this is what the uncorniness of God is. It's so funny, it's so bizarre, it's so uncorny, and I can't think of a better word than that. So what do? We sin, we fall short, we aren't able to take things at high level. But you know what? No matter how much things change, the fact that God is constant means that we can trust Him. And my message to you right now is to have faith. To have faith in God who's driving you through this. And not just any faith, like a blind faith. To just believe that He will not deceive you. The Bible talks about having faith of a mustard seed. And I remember as a small child, I used to go to a church with an amazing, like a phenomenal kids program. And one day, the youth pastor brought a cart of seeds. They had mustard seeds, obviously, but they had all sorts of seeds, like buckeye seeds, which are like big, massive nuts, like massive seeds, and all sorts of seeds from like the size of an almond to like apple seeds to, I don't even remember. There were a lot. And he called up like 15, 10 kids, me being one of them. And all those other kids, they chose one of those seeds. I chose the little mustard seed, like the tiniest thing. I don't even know why I did, but I did. What ended up happening is that the youth pastors grabbed each one of our, the 10 kids of us, and he took us by the shoulders and moved us across the stage. And when he was done arranging us, he told us that he had arranged us by the size of the tree that will grow from the seed that we had picked. And what had happened is that when he came to me, he took my shoulders and moved me on and on, far more and more left, farther than the stage. We went all the way to the wall, and there was a big auditorium. The pastor took me all the way, and he said, "This tree that Samuel had chosen from this small, tiny mustard seed will grow all the way to the ceiling. That's the size and the strength that this tree will grow to, while the other trees are just regular that everyone else had chosen." That's the kind of faith. And another thing about mustard seeds is that scientifically they have 9 layers on it. Like, if it seems empty, but there's actually 9 layers on a mustard seed. So if you can scrape together a shred of your faith, that it only amounts to a mustard seed, there's layers to that faith. And God, being a good God, will see you and meet you where you're at. And He'll show you that things are tough now, but I'm going to take you places where you'll never dream of. And I'm going to show you people who you can only, like, imagine. and I'm going to take you on adventures that will mark your name. It's so bizarre how God chooses certain people to live extraordinary lives. It's also bizarre how many of the people on this earth will never know God. It's so uncorny. Isn't that bizarre? Like the Bible says that people are without excuse because of nature, but people will live their entire lives on this earth without ever even thinking about God, and it's insane. But that's just how reality is. I don't know what the right answer is, but it's just amazing how reality is and how God it just exists in this world. But this is the reality. So this is the Uncorniness of God. If you like this video, let me know. If you didn't like this video, dislike, but please tell me why. And tell me what your favorite scented candle is.